Why kill? Why, indeed. Killing is one of the most senseless pursuits as it perverts one's sense of interpersonal boundaries, expediency, and may plunge one into a spiral of violence, culminating in one's own demise. But sometimes we are forced to kill, to defend ourselves from those who come to kill us and those dear to us, or to defend that which we are ready to kill for. The latter is a question each person ought to answer for themselves, and is not in scope of the present discourse. We are talking Buddhism here, and Buddhism postulates ahimsa, non-violence, as one of its core tenets. For a Buddhist, this is one of those factors which define the rightness of one's livelihood. The instructions of the suttas are pretty clear. Here, Sigalaka Sutta reads in a rather succinct fashion, taking life and stealing, lying, adultery, the wise reprove. Declarative statements are propped up by guidance on the ways of abstention from said acts. For example, the same sutta follows up with this passage about the aforementioned defilements of action. What are the 4 causes of evil from which he, a practitioner, refrains? Evil action springs from attachment, it springs from ill will, it springs from folly, it springs from fear. Basically, one is beset by the unwholesome states, conditioned by contact with objects of perception and living our lives in a mundane world as its denizens. To give an example, you cut your finger with a knife and you feel pain, you run into an unpleasant confrontation and anger arises. This is pretty normal overall, but what is harmful is dwelling on those experiences, giving them extra context, extra focus. If the fire is kept alive, it will keep on burning, even if the original fuel is long gone. So, the classical course of action, one truly devoted to the idea of breaking this chain of destructive mental afflictions, would be to leave their quote-unquote household alive and go into a quote-unquote life of homelessness. The one which leads to the extinguishing of the bonds of samsara, not just being a bum. To modernize this, becoming a monastic, not necessarily an itinerant ascetic of Buddha's time. Anyway, we'll have a separate talk about meditation and contemplation soon, and as I am not interested in relinquishing my householder status, let's get back to the world where our attachments persist and conflict threatens that which we hold dear. The generic advice given to bhikkhus holds. For example, quoting from the Salekha Sutta, others will be cruel. We shall not be cruel here. Others will kill living beings. We shall abstain from killing living beings here. Others will take what is not given. We shall abstain from taking what is not given here. Others will be uncelibate. We shall be celibate here. Well, at least not promiscuous, dear householder, as some other suttas suggest in their advice to lay people. Others will speak falsehood. We shall abstain from false speech here. Others will speak maliciously. We shall abstain from malicious speech here. Others will speak harshly. We shall abstain from harsh speech here. Are those items actionable? I believe so. The thing is, of course, not to fall in love with this or that authoritative quote and be bound by words. That's attachment to views. But to follow the course of action less conducive to the arising of unwholesome states. The grand cause of suffering is ignorance of the conditioned nature of our states and the way we get dragged down into generating a myriad of attachments, likes and dislikes, longing and revulsion to objects upon which quite often we ourselves impose the properties we react to. Our mind is a cave of ghosts, according to a Zen metaphor. This refers to the multitude of thoughts which steal our attention and proliferate ceaselessly until we switch to other ones and fall into the trap of worry and flurry of generating more and more mental content. Aggression is not special. It is a natural reaction to danger, to perceive the aggression of our counterpart and such. An inborn emotion we have. A Buddhist piece of advice would be to register it with your attention, let it come and go, and not to act beyond its scope, if indeed action is due. That's a default kind of mindset which reduces the impact of our mental irritants. Do not scratch that which should be better off covered from the sun. Previously in the Salekha Sutta, I recited a more active approach to reforming one's moral disposition, negating an unwholesome state by not acting upon it and acting in a manner which does not directly arouse it. At the pinnacle stands the cultivation of metta, rendered loving kindness, which is a compassionate and selfless approach to viewing the others and their afflictions. A seemingly extreme but clear demonstration can be found in the simile of the saw. Bhikkhus, even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, he who gave rise to a mind of hate toward them would not be carrying out my teaching. Herein, bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. We shall abide pervading them with a mind imbued with loving kindness, and starting with them we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train, bhikkhus. If you keep this advice on the simile of the saw constantly in mind, do you see any course of speech, trivial or gross, that you could not endure? No, venerable sir. A warrior monk of the Kung Fu B-movies is in stark contrast to that. But any tradition, especially a long-running one, gets renegotiated, reinterpreted, and reconceptualized to fit one's specific needs. And though Buddhism is vocally anti-murder, one does have to defend the three treasures bearing arms. An interesting anecdote is provided by 16th-17th century Zen practitioner Suzuki Shosan, a warrior turned monk. I myself once gave instruction to a fellow who told me, "I love to kill. Teach me to be a Buddha by killing." I said, "Do you enjoy the way each bird you kill squawks out its life, its wings all askew? If you do, are you going to enjoy your own death too? Die gladly, and that's Buddhahood." Being a Buddha means dying untroubled. So every time you kill, practice having your own limbs and bones smashed. Practice dying too. You have to get so you die roaring with laughter. Whoever does that really kills. If that's not the way you kill, your killing is just a warrior's amusement. After that, the man carried out a firm decision to give up killing, and later he advanced in his practice. I myself didn't learn about all virtues from anyone special. I know it because I feel its agony not to die free, and because I've trained myself in various ways. What I teach is Buddhism for cowards. There's more of interest and more of controversy, but getting back to the quote, I take that reflection on death as a violent, disruptive, nigh heretical, but also thought-provoking spin on the channel ground contemplation. See Zen Talk episode 4. By a person privy to warfare. To sum it up, right livelihood and taken life are irreconcilable in my opinion. I don't care to bother with building a case for the contrary. This is not an apologetic channel. If you are a good Buddhist, you shall try to act responsibly and eschew the act of taking life, unless it is absolutely necessary. Regardless, thereby you shall generate unwholesome states. The cause and effect aspect of the karmic law is absolute. Realistically, human societies cannot operate as collections of ascetics devoid of violence and strife, even if only to defend against the external forces. This total renunciation of violence is an ideal, which at times one has to stand up for to preserve. Such is the uneasy answer to the question posed in the title.